Oh, greetings, all lovers of lore and legend. I'm so sorry.
Oh, yeah, you start this one, by the way, Richard.
I started this one. Oh, my gosh. I was just, oh, boy. All right, guys. Last
Almost
week of Lent. Here we go. Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Greetings, all lovers of lore and legend, whether students, teachers, parents, tellers of tales, or monophonic hierophany appreciators.
Great Tales is a podcast about myths and legends from both inside and outside the Christian tradition, and we come to you live twice a month. Talk about these great stories that Christians have been reading and passing on for centuries, and sometimes even longer than that.
Last time we wrapped up our two-part read-through of the first half of the Kebra Nagast, the original Iron Age Abyssinian Raiders of the Lost Ark. We told a story of, we told a story of a queen who likes spicy food, how Solomon's cleverness got ahead of him, and, of course, how the Ark of the Covenant came to Ethiopia.
And this time we're going back, all the way back, to one of the founding figures of European civilization, the poet, the singer, hierophant, and the first theologian of the Greeks, Orpheus, and his descent into the underworld.
So I'm hoping that this episode is going to be a kind of an introduction to two things on this podcast. One is that the kind of the theme of the stories of descents into the underworld, which Father Andrew is going to give us a little bit of an overview about here in a moment. But I am also really really interested in the kind of the way that what in the Middle Ages was called the matter of Rome, that is Greek and Roman myth, legend, and history, the way it was reused in the Middle Ages and kind of developed into our fairy tale tradition. So the plan will be, this week, we're going to be looking at Orpheus and his descent into the underworld. Why? Because we have our own descent into the underworld coming up very soon here as Orthodox Christians. And so it's a good time to start thinking about this, and kind of maybe will also help us with some of the cultural background for how we understand Pascha and Holy Saturday and all of that. But also, I plan to also revisit sometime in another episode in the near future. We will be revisiting medieval retellings of the Orpheus myth. So this will also kind of just lay the groundwork so everybody knows the Orpheus story. This is one of those stories that I think a lot of us have like some sense of. And, it's kind of there, because it's a very strong, potent myth, it's just there in the stuff. It's one of the bones in the soup. It's kind of woven into a lot of things about our culture. Very recently on Apple TV, there's been a show that kind of went big this last year called Severance. I'm not necessarily recommending the show.
Oh, I've heard of it.
Certainly not for young children.
It's got that guy from Parks and Rec, right?
It does have that guy from Parks and Rec.
Comedy.
I mean, the show, it is such a funny show.
I don't know. I've literally never seen it.
It is not a comedy. It is very well written. I have watched it. It is very well written. Wouldn't watch it, with children, but it's a very well written show. However, one of the reasons I was interested in it is because it is, among other things, a retelling of this myth with some interesting twists. So we're not going to talk about that show today. This is the show where we talk about old stuff. So we're going to talk about the original myth, but I just point that out to say that this is a myth that continues to have a lot of resonance for us in our world today, in our lives today, even in the shows you might be talking about with your coworkers around the water cooler. Yeah. So who is Orpheus? Orpheus is one of the most important figures in Greek mythology. He's somebody who is so important in the ancient world, and I think most of us don't understand this now because he's not. Now I think we're just really interested in Hercules, who is also a very important figure.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it's kind of funny that you would say like these were the most important in Greek mythology, because like he's not a god. He's not really a hero in any sense of he went and defeated people or, destroyed the Minotaur or anything like that.
Yeah.
And yet he actually does play this very interesting and critical part in the consciousness of the Greeks. So yeah, it's funny that I was just saying it just kind of shows my own cultural conditioning of how that hit my ear when you said he's one of the most important figures in Greek mythology. Probably a lot of people are like, what?
Huh? What? Who? What? Why? All right. So Orpheus is he's what scholars would call a culture hero, right? This is some kind of a legendary hero who shapes the world, transforms the world through knowledge, through the arts. Usually culture heroes are givers of the arts very often. This is somebody who shapes the way that we know and experience the world and basically tells us how to interact with it. And culture heroes very often, function in this sense for pagan cultures as like an interface between humanity and the gods, right? So the culture hero very often is the hero who founded your city, who will also be kind of like the city's local patron. Yeah. And these figures are we would say, being, they're demonic spirits receiving their worship, whether those are, the demonized spirits of men or, demons, doesn't so much matter for our purposes, but that spirits we're receiving this worship, and then as part of the conquest of Christ and his victory over death, sin, and the devil, these spirits are replaced with the patron saints of these cities and towns and countries and whatnot. And it's how patron saints work. Patron saints are real. If somebody says, "Oh, well, those are just a replacement for the pagan gods," yes, and what's your
literally true,
like,
right?
Do you not?
In a lot of ways, figures like Orpheus, or even some of the big demigods that beat things up and kill things.
Right.
I mean, these are the pagans' versions of saints.
Right.
Right. They're the pagans' failure to make saints.
Right.
Is what it comes down to.
That's a really nice way to put that. Yeah. So Orpheus is a demigod, and that is to say, not a semi demi, but in any case, he is a demigod.
So that makes him a giant.
He is. Yeah. Well, he is. He is. Right. He is the son. Depending on the myth, he's the son either of a muse, usually Calliope, and a Thracian king, the king of Thrace, or he's the son of the god Apollo, usually with the queen of Thrace. But the important thing is that he's half divine, and he's strongly associated with Thrace, which is a region now. I'm always nervous talking about the Balkans in public. I hope everyone knows this.
People get really excited when you talk about the borders.
So excited when you talk about, get a little balmy sometimes. But essentially, Thrace in ancient times is essentially around it's this land between the Aegean Sea and the Black Sea. And it's something like parts of what are modern day Bulgaria, Greece, and Turkey.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was the sort of like historical Roman province of Thrace. So it's bounded by the Balkan Mountains to the north and the Aegean Sea to the south, Black Sea to the east. That's Thrace. Okay. Anyway, like I said, talking about the Balkans, people get a little touchy.
Don't at us, bro. At least you didn't refer to the former Yugoslav Republic of don't say it.
Yes. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Yeah, okay. But he's associated with Thrace, which would be important later. He, like all culture heroes, receives a gift from the gods and then passes it on to humanity. And in the case of Orpheus, it's not about might in battle. It's about something much more powerful than physical prowess, which is music, of course.
Yeah.
As anybody who has watched the important documentary, what's it called? The one about the poor mayor and who's like overwhelmed by this uprising of children who refuse to stop dancing. Did I misunderstand the whole?
Is that Footloose?
Yes.
Okay,
that's right. Couldn't remember the name of it. I may have misunderstood who the villain was in that movie.
Any case, I was going to say, they say that Kevin Bacon, you are never any more than 6.
That's right.
Steps away from Kevin Bacon.
That's right.
And I can tell you, I mean, I don't know what your Bacon number currently is, but mine is 3 because I used to work with someone who knew his first.
Well, that would make mine at least 4.
That's right. So yours is 4 or less.
Yeah.
Because I'm a Bacon 3.
Now, I do have a close relative who was in Hollywood for a number of years and has several IMDb credits. So I might even be closer. I don't know. I would have to ask around.
But, I mean, the Orthodox Church in the United States has a Kevin Bacon.
I do know that.
And that is Jamie Bennett.
Yes.
I don't think we've ever mentioned him on this show before, but he is the Kevin Bacon of Orthodoxy in America.
Jamie Bennett does, or I don't know if he's still doing it, but a podcast for Ancient Faith called Bad Books of the Bible, which is a whole lot of fun.
It might be on pause, actually.
Okay. Well, in any case, it is a lot of fun. People should listen to it. All right. So, Orpheus's gift is music, and he uses the lyre, which in Lyre, in which some misuse sort of the inventor of actually that musical instrument, right? And so and I should say that from a Christian and a Jewish, like ancient Judaism perspective, the creation of musical instrumentation is associated with the Nephilim. This is one of the gifts that the sons of God give to the daughters of men.
Yeah.
And this has something to do with why we don't use musical instruments in worship in the Orthodox Church as a normative thing. I'm not saying it doesn't happen.
And also everybody, this is the origin of the word lyric.
Right. Yes. Right.
This is baked into the way we talk about music.
Yeah. Yeah. And so he's got this. The thing with Orpheus is that he has this, like, he's basically the embodiment of song, right? He has the ability to tame wild beasts. He can move trees and stones themselves to weep at his music, and even, as we're going to see, sway the god of death.
Yeah, I mean, like, the Pied Piper of Hamelin is like the ridiculous kid brother of Orpheus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
in a lot of ways, yeah.
Well, he's musical and he works on rats and kids, but anyway.
Right.
So,
kids. Also kids.
Okay, yeah. I said rats and kids. Yeah.
Oh.
So his most famous story is, of course, his descent into Hades to retrieve his wife Eurydice, which is what we'll be talking about today. But also, the thing to note, and this will become important when we talk about the ways that his story is received and used later in the Christian tradition, is that Orpheus was considered to be more than just, a great, a guy with a really good voice or something. He was believed in the ancient world to be the inventor of the Greek mystery religions. That is basically the founder of paganism, right? And so it is in this context that he was referred to, for instance, in the 5th and 4th centuries. So in the 5th and 4th centuries BC, they had this sort of corpus of texts. It was a collection of hexametric poems referred to as the Orphic Odes or the Orphic texts. And Plato quotes from them extensively, so we know that they existed, that Plato was familiar with them, etc. And there are also lots of other people who refer to them. By the time of Christianity, they're all lost. Like, they're not around anymore, but they had sort of survived in the different Greek pagan mystery cults. And essentially the idea of Orphism, which is sometimes when scholars refer to this whole kind of family of religions that kind of used these hymns, should be emphasized. They're hymns. They're not dogmatic. Most people don't write systematic theology.
Yeah, there's not.
Yeah,
theology per se, the way that we think of theology,
right,
is really in a lot of ways a Christian invention.
Even then, it's like a 19th century German invention in many senses. Well, I just mean that, for instance, like, if you think about our great theologians in our tradition, most of them are writing things that are like occasional letters, which are then used. I mean, from St. Paul all the way up to St. Gregory of Palamas.
But like for instance, just the dogmatic writing that you get, for instance, in the ecumenical councils.
Yes.
This is a Christian phenomenon.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Another good example of what I'm talking about is St. Gregory of the theologian, Nazianzus, the theologian, who most of his writings are homilies and songs and odes, and so actually sort of, you could say, doing theology in verse form is the normative mode, historically speaking.
That's right. That's right.
I think it's pretty safe to say
dense prose and debates and so forth is
right.
A little anomalous.
Yeah, so this kind of group of mystery religions that are sometimes grouped together and called Orphism, they essentially, to really oversimplify, they see the soul as divine but trapped in a cycle of reincarnation, and then so what you need is something. You need music, you need ritual, you need gnosis, right, to be set free from that cycle. And kind of keeping that in mind and kind of tying it back to the story of the descent into the underworld will help us understand Orpheus's role in the ancient world. So he's a poet, he's a prophet, he's a musician / magician, right? He's kind of both of those things. And in fact, all of the scholarship in this is written in French, so it's a little hard to get at. But I know. Who do the French think they are writing theology? But there are strong indications that basically the way that Orpheus was depicted as a youth, that is beardless with a harp, that this affected the depictions of the holy prophet David in Christian iconography later on.
Sure.
Who's also, depicted as, he's a youth, he's got a harp, all those things kind of like check out,
Yeah, like he's the real Orpheus.
Yeah. Well, actually, Jesus is the real Orpheus. Spoilers, Father Andrew. I just Jesus-juked you. No. I'm sorry, guys. This is the absolute state of week 5 of, I just gave up.
This is week 6, buddy.
That's what I mean. You see where I'm at? I just gave up t-shirt wise. Just gave up.
I know.
Completely.
It's just a black shirt.
Just a black shirt now. So Orpheus is he's the poet, he's the prophet, he's the musician / magician, and then sort of a lover who dies for love. That is, he is a martyr to love. Yeah, he is very literally a lover, not a fighter. Orpheus doesn't need to fight things. Like in the Golden Fleece, he puts the dragon. He doesn't need to kill a dragon; just put it to sleep with his music. He casts sleep a lot in D&D terms. Yes. And Orpheus is the OG, this is the bard you really want with your party, and he's somebody who kind of moves between the worlds of the living and the dead, human and divine, myth and ritual, all these different things. And so he's a very important figure in Greek, and basically in the pre-Christian Hellenic world, and also then by extension in Roman civilization. So that being said, the most famous story about Orpheus has to do with his descent into the underworld. And I thought it would be useful, since we're coming up here on Holy Saturday. Again, I don't know when that is, because I don't know what day it is or where I am or what is happening. But we are coming up on Holy Saturday very soon. And with that in mind, I thought it would be just kind of useful before we get into the myth of Orpheus itself, Father Andrew, for you to just give us a little top-up on descents into the underworld.
All right. I'm going to put my my psychopomp hat on. I just try to use that word at least once a week.
Yes.
Actually, yeah. So for those of you to whom that might be a new word, a psychopomp is a guide into the afterlife, through the underworld particularly. We'll meet a couple psychopomps in what I'm about to talk about. So, we're talking ancient Greek literature in this case, Orpheus, but one thing that's useful to know, and I mean, we don't have time to go into all of this, but one thing that's useful to know is that even though Greek is an Indo-European language, culturally and especially religiously, ancient Greeks are in some ways the last ancient Near Eastern group. So they actually share a number of interesting features with ancient Near Eastern religion that they don't as much with what we know about ancient Indo-European religion. And so I thought I would start actually with this little tour of the underworld by looking at a couple of ancient Near Eastern religious figures. So we're going to take 4 trips down before we take our trip down with Orpheus.
Just
and our first trip, our first trip is going to be with a Sumerian goddess named Inanna. Now, Inanna is a very scary, very scary. I mean, ancient Near Eastern goddesses in general are pretty scary. Like, these are not, this is not Aphrodite and Athena, where we have this idea of these glorious, beautiful, austere women. No. These are very, very frightening figures. So Inanna is the Sumerian goddess of war, of love, fertility. So she is both a lover and a fighter. And for her, there's a kind of one thing. So yeah, that's not nice. And her territory is the heavens. So she's a heavenly goddess. There's actually one point, I think it's the Assyrians, that an Assyrian version of her, she gets made their most high god, actually, which is really curious because usually, goddesses are not the most high god in a mythology. But she gets assimilated to gods like, you get Astarte and Asherah. All of these are, in some ways, are considered to be different names for this one goddess. But Inanna is how she is in the Sumerian texts, and that's probably her most ancient name. So she decides to go into the underworld. It's important to note that she is a goddess of the heavens, and she decides to take this trip into the underworld. Okay, this is a theme you're going to see in a lot of these mythological stories about descents in the underworld. She's a goddess of the heavens. She decides to go down there. Well, why is she going there? It's not a social visit. The underworld is ruled by her sister named Ereshkigal, and she's essentially going down there to usurp her throne. Basically, is what it's about. So she goes to the gateway to the underworld, and she meets the gatekeeper, who then says, are you the keymaster? Actually, that's not what that's right. I was expecting you, Richard, to get an 80s film reference. But
I've seen the keymaster.
This is a reference to Ghostbusters. Have you seen Ghostbusters?
Yeah, I've seen Ghostbusters.
Okay. All right. I'm the gatekeeper. Are you the keymaster?
I'm not thinking of. I was thinking of a different movie though.
Like, you were. Yeah.
What's the animated? It's not Keymaster. What's the one that's like the kid goes into the library and he's got like the 4 books that are the 4 different literary genres, and they have to fight all these monsters, and it's like, I
don't know,
seriously terrifying and a little
I was
dramatic.
Thinking of Rick Moranis and Sigourney Weaver.
Oh right, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Although it's kind of reversed, yeah.
Listen, I'm only kind of here today, so
okay.
It's
okay.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
All right. Yes, there is no Richard. There is only Zool. So the gate.
I told you when I went to a secret museum and got to hold Hitler's keys. They had the actual practical prop for the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man there.
Nice.
I have beheld it with my own eyeballs.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Was it still puffed?
Yeah, pretty much.
It pretty much has stayed puffed since the 1980s. Yeah. So the gatekeeper
asked, thank you, Ethan. Oh my gosh, that was... Whoa.
What was it called?
Page Master.
Page Master. Oh, I remember that name. Yeah.
I loved that. I really liked terrifying, give you good reasons to go to therapy as an adult cartoons as a kid, like Watership Down and yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Or Ralph Bakshi, Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah.
With the worst Balrog ever. The limp-winged. Oh. Okay, this is not that podcast, Richard, in case you haven't heard. She speaks to the gatekeeper, and there's 7 gates to get into the underworld. And before she went there, though, she put on a whole bunch of garments and armor and magical. She has a magical weapon and all this kind of stuff. And he says, look, if you're going to get through the first gateway to the underworld, you're going to have to take off some of that stuff. So she takes off one layer, and then she gets to the next gate, and it's smaller. And so you can see how this goes. So eventually she gets to the 7th gate, and by this point she's completely in the buff, right? And she has to actually get down into a fetal position to sort of scoot through the final gateway into the underworld. And it just so happens, how did the ancient Sumerians bury their people? In the fetal position. That's how they would pose the bodies. So it's an indication that she is dead, because go into the underworld, you're dead, right? So she gets through the 7 gates, And she begins her walk through the underworld, and she comes upon her sister, Ereshkigal, on her throne. And, the first time I read this poem, I thought to myself, okay, this is going to be like the big fight scene. This is going to be the big action moment, whatever. No, she literally just knocks her off the throne, and that's it. It's just like in one line or two lines of poetry. A big letdown. I mean, I think that poetry that's 3,500, 4,000 years old should conform to my modern 21st century cultural expectations, and it didn't. So as soon as she gets knocked off the throne, then of course a number of judges immediately appear and put Inanna on trial for what it is that she has done, and she's proclaimed guilty. And so as they do, as is normal, completely normal, they transform her into a slab of meat and hang her from the wall.
Right.
Because as everybody knows, the underworld is basically a frigid
meat locker.
Meat locker. That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Of course.
So now it just so happens that before Inanna went into the underworld, she had a conversation with her servant Ninshubur, who in the earliest texts, Ninshubur is sort of a female kind of maidservant, but then she eventually gets assimilated to some other kind of messenger figures and becomes male, weirdly enough, in other texts. But basically said, look, if I don't come out after a certain amount of time, then you're going to have to save me. And so, of course, that's what happens. Ninshubur goes down into the underworld and pulls her off the wall. And the judges say, okay, look, you can leave, but someone's going to have to take your place. And Inanna, being the wonderful, loving, kind, family-oriented wife that she is, says, fine, you can have Dumazid, who is her husband. So she just throws her husband under the bus. He gets to go to hell, and she gets to leave. So that's basically Inanna's descent into the underworld. Yeah, fun story. Now, the next one I want to take you through is another ancient Near Eastern story, and this is from Canaanite religion, particularly as it's practiced in Ugarit, which is a city it doesn't exist anymore, but it's basically north of what is now Latakia in Syria. Latakia being the Arabic version of the name Laodicea, right? Latakia. And of which there are more than one. Like, this is not the Laodicea mentioned in Revelation.
Not the one mentioned in Revelation.
Yeah, this is a different one.
Yeah, this is the one where the camel dung tobacco comes from.
I think that is true.
Or did before the current unpleasantness.
Yeah, I'm sure you're not referring to economic unpleasantness.
No.
Although that's always there. But so Canaanite religion, this is the religion that directly surrounds Israel. On multiple sides, actually, and eventually gets into Israel, thanks to people like Jezebel and Ahab and so forth. They're doing this worship, and they're worshiping the god Baal. Baal is he's a god of thunder and storms. He's the one you would pray to if you want rain to come. And so that's really
it's a thunder and lightning, very, very frightening kind of a situation.
That's right, exactly. Yeah. Combat, storms, weather, fertility, all of that stuff. That's his deal. Often depicted with bull horns or a bull head. I won't get deep into the, again, utter freaky scariness of this religious group. But there'll be more on that coming out from another source in not too distant future. And so his territory is also the heavens, which, as a storm god, that makes total sense, right?
Yeah, of course.
So he wants to expand his kingdom and to rule the underworld as well. But he doesn't go down there directly himself. He initially decides to send messengers to kind of scope it out. And so he calls his messengers to himself and says, look, I'm going to give you directions on how to get to the underworld. Okay? So first you have to travel to the edge of the world, where the mountains are holding up the dome of the firmament. And there's certain mountains there, and you get to those mountains and you pry them up like the lid of a container, as one does. And so you pry them up, and then there's kind of a passage down underneath, and you can get down into the underworld. And when you get to the underworld, you are going to meet Mot and M-O-T. And Mot is the god of death in Canaanite religion. Okay? This is related to, words for death in Semitic languages. Mot just means death. Like in modern Arabic, al-mut is death, So But he says, look, you're going to see Moat, and but don't get too close to his mouth, because he will swallow you. Moat is depicted usually as a gigantic mouth, this hell mouth, like a serpentine maw. And so the messengers go. They follow the directions. They go down underneath the mountains at the edge of the world, and they see Moat, and they kind of stand back. Don't get too close to his mouth. It's just like with a toddler, right? Don't put anything near their mouth. Yeah. Yeah. So, and they deliver a challenge. Baal actually says, "I'm coming down to conquer you. I'm going to take the underworld." And I mean, Moat's approach to that, his response is basically, "Come at me, bro. Come at me, Baal." And so Baal does go down there after hearing back from the messengers, and he does have a battle with Moat, and Moat swallows him. He defeats him. He kills him. But it turns out that Baal, just like his neighbor Inanna, has left a message, with somebody to come get me if I don't come out after so long. And so his wife Anat, who also happens to be his sister, because that's how these gods roll. Another super duper scary ancient Near Eastern goddess, frightening. Like, I mean, most people are probably not familiar with these, but like maybe you've seen images, for instance, of the Indian goddess Kali, right? Like this is the kind of scary image you want to think about. Okay. Super horrifying stuff. So Anat comes down there and she beats up Moat and grinds him into pieces and drags Baal out, and then Baal gets to establish his kingdom in the
She's all about that grind,
That's right.
Sort of a rise and grind kind of situation.
Wow, Canaanite coffee. It's our new brand.
Rise and grind.
Okay. So now getting a little bit closer to home, let's talk about one of the great Greek myths of descent into the underworld. And we haven't yet done an episode on the Odyssey, but we will. Probably multiple episodes on the Odyssey.
That'll be probably season 2, I think.
Just the Odyssey, yeah.
Yeah.
So in the Odyssey, Odysseus, right, or Ulysses as he is in the Latin version, he's the big hero. Odysseus is not a god, or like our two previous descenders. He is immortal, but he is the great grandson of Zeus. Okay, so just a few generations back, he's got god blood, and Zeus is a storm god, the god of the heavens, once again. So that's one of the layers going on here. And Odysseus, when he's on the island with Circe, who has basically kept him as her bed companion, slave. I don't know the best way to put it, but there you are, since this is a family show. She says, if you stay with me, then I will make you immortal and we can be here forever. And he's like, no, I have a wife, after he's been with her for all this time. And so he decides he's going to go home to Penelope, his wife, and but he doesn't know whether he's ever going to get there, and so he needs to have some divine help to find out. And he's like, "Oh, I'll go talk to the prophet Tiresias, and Tiresias will surely know." And there's a big problem, which is just so happens to be that Tiresias is dead. So he needs to get to the underworld. So he talks to Circe, and Circe says, "Fine, okay, you can leave. She gives him directions. You need to sail out to the edge of the world. There's the big world river out there, beyond the firmament, beyond the dome. Sail over that, and you'll eventually land, and cross over the other side and land. And then you need to dig a trench and bring black sheep with you, by the way, and sacrifice those black sheep there." And dump out the blood of the black sheep into the trench, and the various shades from Hades will approach and try to lick it up. Now, one thing you should know about this is that this is totally a thing in ancient Greek pagan religion.
Yep.
The founding heroes of a lot of cities, they would have a very prominent tomb, and one of the things that they would do to sort of keep the memory or the shade of that hero alive is they would go and pour sacrificial blood down on the graves of these heroes. And this, by the way, and the idea is that you're feeding them, and so you can imagine, of course, there are also rituals in which people would drink blood themselves, because there's this connection of immortality and all this stuff. And this, by the way, is part of why there's a prohibition in the Bible against drinking blood.
Yes.
Sacrificial.
Don't worry, we will
blood.
talk about a Bacchic orgy before this is all over. It's in the notes.
Hey, I said this is a family show, Richard. So, yeah.
It's okay. They have one in Narnia. It's fine.
Yeah, I know they do. It's a little weird. But Circe says, look, the shades are going to approach, but the one you want to talk to is Tiresias. You don't want to let the other shades drink up all your sacrificial blood. So you're going to need to ward off the other shades with your sword, which, like, how does that work? They're basically immaterial, I don't know. But somehow, does he have a magical sword that can ward off shades?
No. I mean, it's sort of, it works because of where he is and the kind of person that he is. And, you gotta let the shades know that you're gonna cut a shade if it gets too close.
Just you're gonna throw a little shade. So eventually Tiresias does appear. I mean, he follows all the directions exactly, and Tiresias appears, and he has this conversation with Tiresias, who says basically, yes, you're gonna get home, but it's gonna be a hot minute before that occurs. And one of the things that's interesting about this is that Circe says about him and his men that they are going to die twice. What does that mean? Well, entering into Hades means you're dead.
That's death number one.
That's death. And then later, of course, they're going to die just like everybody else, right? So that'll be death number two. They're going to die twice. Okay, so then our final descent into the underworld that we're giving for context, and this is the one where I like to kind of raise Richard's hackles. And that's a Roman story about Aeneas.
We're about to do so much Virgil and Ovid, like you don't even know.
Okay. So maybe I won't throw out my comment about the Aeneid just being Homer fanfic and pro-Caesar propaganda and such.
I mean, it's definitely propaganda. I mean,
absolutely.
Everything's propaganda for something, but
not everything. Don't be so cynical, Richard. Not everything is propaganda.
But it's also like one of the most enduring works of human literature for a reason.
Sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
I'm not the cynical one. I love the Aeneid. I'm comfortable with what it is. Like I understand.
Oh, you just like propaganda, is what you're saying.
Well, I mean, I think about the Roman Empire a lot, like at least daily.
So the Aeneid, in many ways, is modeled on the Odyssey, actually, in a number of ways. But we don't need to get into all of that at this point. But there are echoes.
So many things to say.
Echoes.
So the Aeneid is like the Aeneid is the Homeric epics in reverse. So the Homeric epic starts with a conquering of a city, and then you have the home going. Yeah, whereas Aeneas is a hero who has the opposite problem, and so what he needs to do is find his new home, and then conquer it. And so the first half of the Aeneid, as planned, is the nostos, the homegoing, and Virgil takes the tropes of the Odyssey and basically transforms them and plays with them in some really beautiful ways, right?
I know. Yeah.
Well, listen, you're throwing all this shade to my guy Virgil, and
the shades. We're going with the shades again. Well, this is a very shady business that I'm engaging in here right now, Richard.
Virgil is still a shade, as everybody who's read the Divine Comedy knows. But anyway,
so he makes a good psychopomp for sure.
You have this journey, and then basically there's supposed to be the conquest. So the second half of the Iliad as planned, or the Aeneid as planned, would have basically been Virgil doing the same thing for the Iliad, but Virgil dies before he finishes it. So like all great poems, many great poems anyway, it is unfinished.
That's true.
Yeah.
Just like the guy writing on the wall of the Castle Og.
Every time we throw shade at Virgil, the Aeneid series becomes one episode longer. I'm just sitting over here making notes.
So this shady business, yes. So there are echoes of the Odyssey. That's all I'm trying to say here. So Aeneas is a demigod straight out. I mean, he's the son of Aphrodite and his father Anchises. And there's a number of similarities in terms of him getting to the underworld with regards to Odysseus. Like, he needs to have directions given to him, and they're given to him by a figure called the Sibyl. And the Sibyl also acts as a guide, so she's a psychopomp for him.
Yeah.
She takes him on the tour.
She's also a relative of his. She's not a sister, but she's a female relative, which is also kind of supports that same trope.
Yeah, and she's a prophet within this context. Like, she gets possessed by Apollo, and she's oracular and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's why it makes sense then that he has to sacrifice to Apollo in order to make this entrance, and he has to journey into a cave. Like, there's a trip. But one of the things that the Sibyl tells him is, you need to go to the sacred grove and get this golden bough from a tree. And the golden bough effectively acts as a kind of passport / protection in the underworld. He needs to hold on to that and keep it so that he can get in, and so he won't get destroyed while he's there. So he does. There's a guy named
James Fraser who went ham on this idea, but
the whole golden bough, yeah. So he goes down there. I mean, among other things, he sees Dido, or Dido, really, probably, who he had this tryst with in Carthage. Carthago delenda est. But anyway,
no, it ain't. No, it isn't. No, it ain't.
So, but he goes down there. So instead of talking to Tiresias, like Odysseus, he talks to his dad Anchises. Again, he's looking for guidance for the trip. And also, it's also said of him that he dies twice, because he goes into Hades, he comes out, and of course later on he's gonna die again, because even though he is a demigod, he still is mortal. He still can die. So these are. I mean, there's a lot of other, and I think we will do. I mean, we're definitely going to do more. So this is just a quick and dirty guide to the underworld, to descents into the underworld, descensus ad infernos, as they say in the literature.
Yes.
And I think that this helps to give us some level of background. I mean, some of these stories are way more ancient than the Orpheus story, as far as we know. Especially the Sumerian and Canaanite stuff.
The Orpheus myth is
deeply old.
The Orpheus myth is definitely older than Homer. Which there's something about which definitely situates it maybe Bronze Age or earlier. Earlier than the Bronze Age. Yeah.
But one thing that you'll notice is, and this is kind of the point of giving this little tour, this four trips actually we've taken into the underworld now, is that people groups, religions, mythic, tribes, they think about this. They think about taking trips from the underworld and can you come back out? And generally speaking, the answer to that question in paganism is no, you can't. Not really. Now, sometimes people make temporary trips in the underworld, which is what the Orpheus trip is. Right. But once you're there, at the end of your life, you're there. Period. And which is one of the reasons that makes the Christian tradition so radically different from everything else. So anyway, thanks for the opportunity to just kind of give people a little.
It's okay. I'm sorry for heckling you about Virgil.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
Have I ever told you the story of how I was heckled during a speaking engagement once?
I don't know. I was. Feel like I would remember this.
No, I mean, it's okay because we're friends, I mean, it's not truly heckling. It's actually very carefully crafted content delivery.
Oh,
that's what we were just doing.
It's right. This is a work, you people. This is a work.
This is a bit. Yeah. No. No. I was. I won't name any names. This was many years ago, but I was giving some talks at a church, and I was actually heckled by two people in the front row.
So not
while I was doing it, and wouldn't you know it? But both of them were priests. And I literally had to deliver the, "Father, would you like to come teach?" in front of everybody else. But yes, I have been heckled in person before, but it really was just the one time, and it was by clergy.
All right. Okay, so
where are we?
All right. Well, after throwing all the shade at my Roman buddies, we're going to get into some Ovid and some Virgil. That's what we're going to do now. Yeah. So the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice is extremely well known in the ancient world, and it is a weird. It's so well known that it actually doesn't really show up in its entirety at least in extant sources. And what I mean by that is people don't feel like it's necessary to write it down very often because like, oh, well, the story of Orpheus, and they'll just make a reference to it. So more simply, it's just referred to. Orpheus is one of those figures who's so essential that he's going to show up basically everywhere in the, up through the first 5 centuries AD, including Plato, the Church Fathers, the guys the Church Fathers were arguing against. The early opponents of Christianity used Orpheus a lot, as we're going to talk about. So it's worth knowing his story, if only because we need to understand how his myth is used a little bit later on. Now, fortunately, there are 2 good Latin retellings of the myth, both of which agree in all their major details.
Can anything good come out of Latin?
And both of which, gosh darn it, are written around the same time by the two great universal historians of Roman civilization, who are, of course, Virgil and Ovid.
Yeah.
Ovid's is in prose as part of the Metamorphoses. Virgil's is in verse. And it is part of a surprising and wonderful work called the Georgics. It's the same word as George, okay, which means like the farmer. Yeah. Which combines mythology with beekeeping and farming advice. And it's
most manuals like that do combine those things, right? I mean, all of my beekeeping manuals have mythology.
One would expect. Yeah. And it's funny, if you want to talk about things cynically being propaganda, right? So Virgil is probably commissioned to write the Georgics because he is they need a bunch of soldiers to please stop being soldiers, take their farms, and start farming now. Like, it's really important. They need guys to retire because they have not enough farmers and too many soldiers after all the civil wars that have been fought over the last several decades.
Yeah.
And so Virgil is basically hired to compose this work, which will ennoble and meditate upon the life of the farmer as the life of the soul. And sort of show how farming is a pursuit that is actually worthy of great men, which is, I would say, is actually kind of an unusual feature of Roman civilization, is that, all their great men, that you're supposed to go back to the cabbages once you're done saving the Imperium and so on. Now, obviously farming in this context probably means, you have a lot of land and a lot of slaves, but...
Sure.
But in any case,
when Cincinnatus went back to his farm, he didn't actually pick up a hoe.
Well, he may have, but I really do like Cincinnatus, and I like to imagine he's the sort of guy who didn't mind getting his hands dirty. But of course, obviously, he had slaves and everything else. So anyway, don't mess with my Cincinnatus headcanon. Why are you coming after all my guys, man?
I was just listening to recently. One of my favorite podcasts. I think I mentioned it maybe on this one before. The Rest is History.
Yes.
And they did a series on the American Revolution.
Yeah.
And of course they talk about George Washington, who is being hailed as
American Cincinnatus.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why Cincinnati is named Cincinnati.
That is why it is named Cincinnati. It's because there was a sort of order that was formed by his proteges called like the Order of the American Cincinnatus or something like that. And they named a city after him, which is pretty rad.
I'm going back to my plow.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so
road.
Yep. So for today's podcast,
first Elton John quote on the podcast, I think
it's impossible to say. Nobody knows. All my Elton John references are mainly going to come from like The Lion King, so I'm not going to be a lot of help in this regard.
Wow. Okay.
So, all right. So for today's podcast, we're mainly going to use Ovid, but then we're also going to read some passages from Virgil, which I think are really lovely. Or terrifying. The translations we'll be using will all be those of A.S. Klein. The reason I picked him is because the stuff is all free online, so you can go out to like Poetry and Translation and look up Ovid, look up Virgil, and find all their stuff there for those who want to follow along at home. So let's get into it. Beginning with as all stories begin with a wedding. Hymen, called by the voice of Orpheus, departed, and dressed in his saffron robes, made his way through the vast skies to the Ciconian coast, but in vain. He was present at Orpheus's marriage, true, but he did not speak the usual words, or display a joyful expression, or bring good luck. The torch, too, that he held sputtered continually. with tear-provoking flames, and no amount of shaking contrived to light it properly. Kind of like trying to keep your torch lit during a Paschal procession on a rainy Texas night.
Or try not to, light on fire the hair of the young woman in front of you.
Also that, yeah. It might be a way to meet girls, though. Like, I don't want to rule anything out.
You might meet them. That is true.
All right. So the result was worse than any omens. While the newly wedded bride Eurydice was walking through the grass with a crowd of naiads as her companions, she was killed by the bite on her ankle from a snake sheltering there.
Man, of all the luck.
When Thracian Orpheus, the poet of Rhodope, had mourned for her greatly in the upper world, he dared to go down into Styx, through the gate of Taenarus, also to see if he might not move the dead.
Wow.
So,
dead on your wedding day.
Hymen.
Great. I mean, I feel like a certain poet of the 1990s might have said, "Isn't it ironic?"
I didn't get that one either.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
that song might be older than you, Richard. I have to.
It's in my. If it's in my gap, then it's.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So Hymen, or Hymenaeus the Joiner, is the Greek god of weddings and marital congress. He attends every wedding, as we all know.
Yeah. So if he shows up and he's got a sputtery torch and he's not bringing good luck,
bad.
It's going to be bad.
So there are omens. There are things that you would look for at a wedding, and for some reason, some of these still sort of survive to us. Things like there's with a wedding cake. It used to be kind of like an old wives' tale or something. That like if you don't finish the wedding cake, the piece of cake that your beloved is feeding you in front of everyone. That if you can't finish the whole thing, that's bad luck. There's other things that are bad luck. So there's this idea of like omens would cluster around a wedding, which would basically determine whether or not the marriage was going to be successful. And so in this case, Hymen attends the wedding, but he doesn't speak his usual words of blessing. The torch that he holds, which there's a marital torch, which is part of the Greek and the Roman wedding ceremonies, it sputters out. They can't relight it. Its fumes cause people at the wedding to weep, which is a problem because you're supposed to dance at weddings and cry at funerals, and not the other way around. Anytime it's the other way around, something bad's going to happen, right? And so obviously, this is a bad omen. Now, as we've all read Euripides' play *The Trojan Women*, you will all know that you want Hymen's torch to burn bright. Bring the light, uplift and show its flame. I am doing the god's service. See, I making his shrine to glow with tapers bright. O Hymen, king of marriage, blessed is the bridegroom. Blessed am I also, the maiden soon to wed a princely lord in Argos. Hail Hymen, the king of marriage. That's a old Greek hymn to Hymen, the god of marriage. And this idea that you're supposed to, like, somebody would be bringing the torch in as part of the bridal procession. They'd be bringing the torch in, and you want the torch to be light and beautiful. People, I mean, like, fire is beautiful. I don't know how else to say that now.
Yeah, I mean,
it sound like some kind of a psycho, but it's like, it's a part of any kind of a joyful celebration is that you're going to have things cheerfully ablaze.
Yeah, lights. I mean, it's just a potent symbol in so much.
We don't appreciate this enough now, because if I want light, I can flip a switch.
That's right. I mean, but think about it. For instance, I mean, we have, in the Orthodox Church, there's candles that are lit as part of the service.
Right, exactly.
This is part of it. We do the same thing at baptisms. Yeah. And there's lots of other things, and it's connected with this very festal experience.
Right. That's what those torches are about. That's what the special candles, like the bishop has. That's what they're about. It's festive. It's a celebration. We're doing something important here. We're offering prayers. So of course you're going to light a candle. All these different things, kind of like the torch or the candle. All of this is really potent symbolism. In the Middle Ages, there were whole guilds for parishes that were devoted basically to cultivating tracts of land so that the income from that land could be used to buy beeswax candles for the parish church.
Wow.
Like, it becomes a whole thing. Like, people would leave it in their wills, and they would say, I'm leaving this much land to the church so that at Pascha and the day of my death and these certain other days, high feast days of the year, that there will be, this many pounds worth of lights in the church. So you'd come in, and the church would be just blazing with light, and you'd be like, oh, it must be a feast day, or oh, it must be, so-and-so, that wealthy woman who passed away a few years ago. Let's pray for her soul, right? So, I mean, light is just much more important in these cultures than I think a lot of us usually understand nowadays. So Eurydice,
I was going to say, so you don't want it to be like a candle in the wind.
See, that one I got.
Never fading with the sunset when the rain set in.
That's right.
There we go. That's our second Elton John reference.
There we go. Yeah, I did understand that one.
Oh, okay. That's good.
All right. So...
You were like 8 years old, I think, when that song came out.
Yeah. Again, the fact that I was or wasn't alive when a song was written means absolutely nothing, has nothing to do with whether or not I will know it. Yeah.
It's true.
All right. So Eurydice, who in some stories is a nymph, in others she's a mortal woman. But what all the stories agree on is that basically right after the wedding, she's out walking with the naiads. Like, she's out with her bridesmaids, basically, right? The naiads are female spirits associated with fresh water. Orpheus, a lot of early Greek heroes like Orpheus is closely connected with Apollo. So Orpheus, he didn't kill a Hydra, but he's associated with Apollo, who of course killed the Pythia, who's associated both with the Oracle and also fresh water. Cadmus, killed a water serpent. A lot of the early Greek heroes, culture heroes, kill a serpent who guards water. Water's the original thing that dragons guard.
Well, and it connects. I mean, it very much connects with like Apollo. Okay, he's a sun god. These gods of the heavens in one way or another, they are often pitted against dragons and water beasts and all this kind of. And the reason for this, maybe that's not the right phrase.
Apollo picks up so many interesting things, though.
Oh, it's true. Maybe we should do like a whole Apollo.
Yeah, because he's really a combination of like a sun god, a plague god, a music god, a poetry god.
He just assimilates all the things.
Like all these different things. Yeah.
But I was going to say like if you learn to think mythically, which is part of what this whole podcast is about.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
When you see the sun rising out of the east. So let's say you live in the the Eastern Mediterranean or whatever. You see the sun rising out of east, and where does it set? It sets into the ocean,
into the sea,
into the sea. And so there is, of course, language and stories and traditions about the sun or sun god going down there and battling with these sort of oceanic monsters.
That's definitely a big part of Egyptian, the sun god battling Apophis.
Yes, exactly. And then he comes out, victorious on the other end.
So naiads are specifically associated with bodies of fresh water, and there's a trope within Greek mythology about serpents guarding sources of fresh water. Mm-hmm. And so, in any case, the serpent bites Eurydice on the foot, and she dies, and her shade descends down into Hades. Now, normal men might simply have mourned her passing, but Orpheus is not a normal man. He's the son of the god Apollo. He's the greatest singer who's ever lived or who will ever live. And so he takes it upon himself to journey down into Hades in the hopes of rescuing his wife, bringing her back to the land of living. He does this not with a suit of armor, not with a sword, not with blood to satiate the beast down there. Orpheus doesn't need any of those things because Orpheus has his lyre.
Yeah. So this is what it next says in Ovid. Through the weightless throng, which, kudos to the translator there.
It's a pretty strong translation. I like it a lot.
Yeah. Through the weightless throng and the ghosts that had received proper burial, he came to... that's a reference. You don't get to be sort of at rest in Hades unless you've received proper burial.
Right.
You wander around restless and unhappy, and you haunt people if you don't get proper burials. Okay, yeah. Through the weightless throng and the ghosts that had received proper burial, he came to Persephone and the Lord of the Shadows, he who rules the joyless kingdom. Then striking the lyre strings to accompany his words, he sang, O gods of this world, placed below the earth, to which all who are created mortal descend. If you allow me, and it is lawful to set aside the fictions of idle tongues and speak the truth, I have not come here to see dark Tartarus, nor to bind Cerberus, Medusa's child, with his 3 necks and snaky hair. My wife is the cause of my journey. A viper she trod on, diffused its venom into her body, and robbed her of her best years. I longed to be able to accept it, and I do not say I have not tried. Love won. Because, love conquers all, right?
Well, yeah, so one of Ovid's main themes, by the way, a moment ago I said that Ovid's Metamorphoses is in prose, which was completely wrong. I'm just chalking that one up to the sleep deprivation right now. I'm very sorry. Anyway, Metamorphoses is a poem, dactylic hexameter, I think. And in any case, its main theme, or one of its main themes, certainly the theme in Ovid that's the most important in the Middle Ages, is the power of love, that is, of amor, or eros, right?
That's the power of love.
Which is it's not, this is not the love that you feel in a mature marriage when you look at your wife and you think about all the things that you've been through and the children that you've raised together and you love being in her company. This is the all-consuming passion that when it grabs a hold of you, it unmans you. And it takes away your agency and it transforms you or other people in some way, often not.
Yeah, it's a curious thing. It makes one man weep and other man sing. So.
All right.
I mean, so how Orphic is Huey Lewis, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, sure.
It's true.
I'm so tired. Why are you doing this to me? Okay, so
this is keeping you awake, Richard.
Yeah. Oh boy. So Orpheus comes to stand before the throne of Hades and Persephone, right? And what he does is he strikes up his lyre. He begins to actually sing to them a song of love. Yeah. So like Ovid's Metamorphoses is like sort of multiple songs of love, and a lot of the stories in the Metamorphoses have to do with, a god like Apollo or somebody is overwhelmed with a passion for a mortal and wants to essentially rape them. That's and that word in the ancient world means two things. It means the thing that you're thinking of, but it also just means like seize them, take them, kidnap them, carry them off, right? Basically, this god wants to come down and possess you and pull you away completely out of your entire life, out of everything that you know, right? All these different things. And so sometimes the figures will transform, into various things like, a myrtle tree or a laurel bush or, a certain kind of bird. So there's a lot of transformations that happen like this. So the idea is that love is this force that is so powerful, this desire that comes upon you that is so powerful that it forces a transformation of some kind.
Yeah.
Now, one of the stories of love.
I was going to say before you dive into that though, like this is not love like love your neighbor.
Yes. Yeah.
This is love like, driven by, as Robin Williams puts it in Dead Poets Society, a deeper force.
Man, another movie with like it's such a choice to have Robin Williams play the villain role in that movie. It's just it's so interesting.
Wow.
But yeah, so anyway,
man.
Yeah. So the thing that so he begins to sing this song of love. And the song of love is how he has been drawn here. And he hasn't come for all the reasons that other heroes come. To see dark Tartarus, to bind Cerberus or Cerberus, Medusa's child with his 3 necks and snaky hair. All of these things that normally like Hercules or any of the other demigods who have in this generation of demigods, of which Orpheus, Heracles, they all belong to the same generation. Into which the reasons that they would have come down into the underworld. Orpheus isn't here for that. He's here for his wife. And so he says he's actually been propelled here by love, a force so powerful that he's, he tried his best to just sort of accept his grief. People die all the time. But it wouldn't let him, and so now he's been forced to come here. And he says, I do not say that I have not tried, that is, to accept what's happened, but love won. And then he goes on to say of love, he, that is love, Amor, or Eros, is a god well known in the world above, though I do not know if it is so here. Though I do imagine him to be here as well. And if the story of that rape, now in this case it means kidnapping, in ancient times is not a lie, you were also wedded by Amor.
Yeah, so he's talking to Hades and Persephone here.
Yeah, I'll tell this story in a moment, or you can. I beg you, by these fearful places, by this immense abyss, and the silence of your vast realms, reverse Eurydice's swift death. All things are destined to be yours, and though we delay a while, sooner or later, we hasten home. Here we are all bound. This is our final abode, and you hold the longest reign over the human race. Eurydice, too, will be yours to command when she has lived out her fair span of years to maturity. I ask this benefit as a gift, but if the fates refuse my wife this kindness, I am determined not to return. You can delight in both our deaths.
Yeah, this is interesting because, I mean, for lots of reasons, but it communicates that pagan fatalism, like the sense that Hades, look, you're going to have everybody.
Right, in the end, yeah.
In the end, you're going to have everybody, and you're going to have them for the longest. People are dead much longer than they're alive.
Yeah, so, there's this old myth of the three sons of Kronos, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, and they're dividing up the world between them, basically. And Zeus gets the heavens, Poseidon gets the earth and the sea, and then Hades gets the underworld. And, of course, the idea is Hades maybe not totally happy about this because it's just dead people. But then they sort of make the argument that, listen, Hades, actually, you have the biggest kingdom because it's a sort of a Hotel California situation, right?
He's like, I see dead people.
Yeah. That's not... Anyway, okay. Ay. I was setting you up, and then you just...
I never watched that movie, actually.
Totally
yeah, you can check out any time you like, but you can never leave.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. I know.
So
you know, I was driving through Youngstown, Ohio, of all places.
Of all places.
And which is in northeastern Ohio.
By the only canonical way to refer to Ohio is just say, Ohio, of all places.
Of all places.
And then continue.
Yeah.
And then continue.
And in Youngstown is firmly in the gray sludge for 7 months out of the year realm of Ohio.
Of all places.
And as I was driving through there is a hotel called the Hotel California that is right near the main road. And they have these big, horribly done plastic palm trees. And it's like, yeah, you can check out anytime you like. But yeah, it just turned... probably the Eagles didn't realize this when they were singing about this place, but the Hotel California is a hotel you can never leave, and it is in Ohio, of all places.
Of all places, yeah. Yeah, so in a song, Orpheus makes an appeal here, and of course the sort of the subtext of the song, it's quite subtle, is and it's definitely to Ovid's point, which is like who is actually the strongest god? Right, because the argument is actually Eros is the strongest god, because even Zeus, even Hades are not immune to his arrows, right?
Yeah.
And so, do you get it? They're not immune to his arrows.
Gotcha.
Like Eros is the
arrows of Eros.
Yep.
Works only in English.
This is not going well, guys. All right, so, so he's appealing to the story. The myth that's usually called the rape of Persephone, or the kidnapping of Persephone, is maybe like a less charged way to, but it's basically there's this woman and she's really beautiful and Hades must have her, so he kidnaps her and he brings her down, but she's the daughter of Demeter, right? Who's basically the goddess of the earth, or is an earth goddess, an agriculture goddess. And so basically they work out a deal in which she spends Persephone, who is spring, basically she spends half the year in Hades and half the year with her mother.
And in Athens, there was traditionally a ritual that they would do, where they would go search for Persephone through the streets of Athens.
Yeah,
you know, like this was part of the cultic world. I mean, these are not just stories that they told. This is part of their religion.
Absolutely. You know? And so the point is that Hades was moved by Eros to kidnap Persephone, right? And so he points out, he says, you know, oh yeah, everybody knows about love in the world above. but I imagine he's here as well. So he's sort of saying, hey, listen, you know what I'm talking about. Like, you've been...
You know what I'm talking about.
It's like, you know...
Eyebrow raise.
Yeah, right. You're also... Yeah. You're not immune to the thing that brought me here, right? And so... And then he sort of basically says, you should be willing to play the long game here, right? Everyone, Eurydice, me, everyone's going to come down to your realm. And all I'm asking is that we get the time together would have sort of been due to us fairly if she hadn't been bitten by the serpent. And if you refuse, I'm going to stay here. Which is, I don't know, not a great threat.
Right. Say if I were Hades, I'd be like, welcome to the Hotel California.
Yes, right. But it does work. So once you read this next bit.
Yeah, okay. So the bloodless spirits wept as he spoke, accompanying his words with the music. Tantalus did not reach for the ever-retreating water. Ixion's wheel was stilled. The vultures did not pluck at Tityus's liver. The Belides, the daughters of Danaus, left their water jars, and you, Sisyphus, perched there on your rock. Then they say for the first time the faces of the Furies were wet with tears, won over by his song. The king of the deep and his royal bride could not bear to refuse his prayer, and called for Eurydice. I love that idea of everything sort of like pausing, including Sisyphus.
I have this derpy image in my mind of, like, you know, the vulture that's eating Titius's liver just sort of looks up, you know, like
and he goes back to the liver,
and they're both and both Titius and the vulture are like, oh man, that's really nice, and they just have like a moment, you know, they're just kind of jamming. Yeah, but basically the point is that all the torments of Tartarus, which is the bad part of hell or the worst part of hell, there's no good parts, and I mean, it's sort of hard, but anyway, there's a but yeah, so there's like the worst parts of hell, right? Even the torments there cease, and Hades himself is moved to deep pity. So this moment is really beautifully depicted in Virgil's Georgics, which I thought I would read.
I have to tell you, in my headcanon, the Song of Orpheus is basically Redemption Song by Bob Marley. Huh. You know, that there's, I don't know. I mean, I hear Bob Marley. I don't know. There's just something about, I don't know.
That's,
I just had some curry shrimp at a Jamaican restaurant, and that might be the other night, and that might be related. But
I mean, I love Bob Marley. I don't know anybody who doesn't, but I've just never thought about him in that connection. So this is what Virgil says. He even entered the jaws of Taenarus, the high gates of Dis, and the grove dim with dark fear, and came to the spirits and their dread king, and hearts that do not know how to soften at human prayer. Nobody prays to Hades to help or deliverance, by the way.
No.
The insubstantial shadows and the phantoms of those without light came from the lowest depths of Erebus, startled by his song, as many as the 1,000 birds that hide among the leaves when vesper or wintry rain, vesper's the west wind, drives them from the hills. Mothers and husbands, and the bodies of noble heroes bereft of life, boys and unmarried girls, and young men placed on the pyre before their father's eyes. Round them are the black mud and the foul reeds of Cocytus, the vile marsh holding them with its sluggish waters, and Styx confining them in its ninefold ditches. The house of dread itself was stupefied, and innermost Tartarus and the Furies, with dark snakes twined in their hair, and Cerberus held his 3 mouths gaping wide. And because he's a dog, they all tilted to one side a little bit. And the whirling of Ixion's wheel stopped in the wind.
Yeah.
This is a great beekeeping book.
Yeah, exactly. Brings Hades to a standstill.
So then Eurydice comes.
Yep. And she was among the recent ghosts, and walked haltingly from her wound. The poet of Rhodope received her, and at the same time accepted this condition. He's the poet of Rhodope, by the way.
Yep.
In case you don't remember, everybody. Accepted this condition, that he must not turn his eyes behind him until he emerged from the vale of Avernus, or the gift would be null and void. So this is the hazard.
If I ever start a metal band, it will be called the Vale of Avernus, but there's zero chance that somebody's not already done that. Zero chance.
Yeah. I mean, I earlier today I named my new metal band Ugaritic Death Curse. So you can imagine who I was talking to. But yeah, Veil of Avernus. I mean, that's got that hot alliteration there.
It does. It does. Yeah. So Eurydice, by the way, notice the important detail that she's still feeling her wound, which seems to indicate that she is among the recent ghosts who have not yet had their burial rites performed, which is just an interesting detail.
She says she's not quite dead. And Orpheus goes down, you can't take her like this. It's against regulations.
So Orpheus is allowed to take her back on the condition, and it's a very interesting condition, that he not look back at her until he has left the underworld.
Yeah, what is that about? What is that about? Like, why is that the condition? I've thought about this for a little while, and I don't know. I haven't hit upon something. We're going to get to that?
I'm fascinated by this, and a lot of them have opinions about it. So they took the upward path through the still silence, steep and dark, shadowy with dense fog, drawing near to the threshold of the upper world. Afraid she was no longer there, and eager to see her, the lover turned his eyes.
Oh.
In an instant, she dropped back, and he, unhappy man, stretching out his arms to hold her and be held, clutched at nothing but the receding air.
Oh man, the pathos.
Dying a second time. She's one of the twice dead. Dying a second time now, there was no complaint to her husband. What then could she complain of except that she had been loved? She spoke a last farewell that now scarcely reached his ears, and turned again towards that same place.
Man.
So, I mean, this is good stuff. This is so good. So, what's the deal with the prohibition not to look back, and why does he do it? What's the significance, right? So in the Symposium, in Plato's Symposium, Orpheus is criticized for basically failing the test of love. Now, there's a few different takes on this in the ancient world, and I have my own take, but this is what's in Plato. That first of all, if Orpheus had just been a real man, I mean, there's sort of the sense that if Orpheus had been a real man, instead of trying to cheat death with music, he would have just accepted it. You know, in other words, he would have just stayed in Hades, right?
Yeah.
The backwards glance then is kind of symbolic of Orpheus's overall failure of moral courage. So this is what the Symposium says. In this manner, even the gods give special honor to zeal and courage in concerns of love. But Orpheus, son of Eurydice, sent back with failure from Hades, showing him only a wraith of the woman for whom he came. Her real self they would not bestow. This is kind of like a midrash. It's like a let me retell the myth a little bit. By the way, and obviously this predates Ovid by quite a bit.
Yeah, like as I say, it's like it's the suggestion that the gods were just sort of
right.
Like he didn't get the real Eurydice. They knew that he was a loser.
Right, exactly. Yeah. it's quite interesting. But Orpheus, son of Eurydice, they sent back with failure from Hades, showing him only a wraith of the woman for whom he came. Her real self they would not bestow, for he was accounted to have gone upon a coward's quest. Too like the minstrel that he was. Plato, by the way, does not like musicians. And to have lacked the spirit to die as Alcestis did for the sake of love when he contrived the means of entering Hades alive.
French, apparently, like the Greeks would say, I would die for love. Mm-hmm. The English, I will die for honor. And then in Russian literature, I will die. Yeah.
Yes. So another way to think about this that I think is being used by Ovid is about the way that the Metamorphoses is, among other things, about the way that love or eros or lust, amor, overcomes and transforms us. And it's not always for the better. So the idea is that if Orpheus's love for his wife had been moderate, right? It's a sort of it's a paradox. It's the sort of the test is the test of, it's a test of maturity. It's a test of moderation. It's a test of trust.
Yeah.
And if his love for his wife had been moderate, then because it's not like I've kind of heard modern retelling sometimes where they'll do a thing where he hears her stumble and just sort of like forgets himself and looks back, but that's not what Ovid says.
No, it's not.
In his retelling of the myth, Ovid basically just says, it says that afraid she was no longer there, so they're passing through the fog that's on the threshold of the upper world. Afraid she was no longer there and eager to see her, the lover turned his eyes. So he's premature, actually. He sort of thinks, okay, we're out now. And he turns around and he looks and he doesn't wait and he doesn't exercise prudence, right? Yeah. So prudence in Roman thought is depicted as having three sets of eyes. You have a set of eyes that looks forward to the future, a set of eyes that look to the past, and then a set of eyes that look at the present. And so prudence is the ability to kind of see where you're going, see where you've been, and have this perspective on the world. By the way, that gets carried into Dante as one of the virtues.
Yeah, I mean, also, like, I think one of the things that modern people who have gone through, well, we didn't personally go through, but our whole culture went through romanticism and all this stuff.
Yeah, of course.
The idea of overwhelming passion for another person is considered to be virtuous.
Right.
Right. That's the thing. But in the ancient world, love sickness was a disease.
Yeah.
You would get a doctor to come and try to cure you of.
Yeah.
And I mean, that seems to be part of what's going on here is that Orpheus, yeah, sure. I mean, he's the greatest singer who ever lived. You know, he moves the heart of Hades himself. But I don't know. He's kind of he's not much of a dude. He's not much of a man. A man's man or whatever. He's overcome. Like he's so overcome by his desire for Eurydice,
right,
that he does something stupid like walk into the underworld.
Ovid's writing was, let's say, controversial and earned him official censor even in his own time.
Sure, right. I mean, the Romans are even kind of more moralistic than the Greeks.
Yeah, people forget that. Actually, well, sort of depends on which Roman you're talking about, but certainly Augustus Caesar, the man himself, was a very, very strict with himself when it came to personal morals, and very strict with, tried to be very strict with his family members, and kind of had this ideal of here's what the, Republican virtue should look like, which many people around him did not live up to, but that was his idea. And so Ovid's work, which has to deal with these, these various themes, which, we keep. Yeah, anyway, it deals with these various themes, was controversial in its own time. But I would just say I don't believe Ovid is naive about the dangers of this kind of love. And, the sense really is, what you just said, like the idea of even now in every romance, like like a rom-com or, I don't know, like any kind of a story about love that you want to tell, it always stops before the wedding. Like there are no, with a few exceptions, there are, very few rom-coms that, are about, a 30-year marriage or something like that, right?
Yeah, and I mean,
about,
this has been going on
if they
for a
are,
long
it's
time.
about, there's an overwhelming passion that I've lost and I need to recover. Well, I mean, it certainly
right.
goes back to like the troubadour position. Tradition.
Right. Well, and even before that, like, I mean, come live with me and be my love and we will all the pleasures prove, right? I mean, Shakespeare, his plays that are called comedies, they always end with marriages, with a wedding. And I mean, that's what makes them a comedy in Shakespearean terms. Right. And that's the end. I mean, as much as I love Shakespeare, he kind of is one of the people who did this to us. This idea that the consummation, devoutly to be wished, at the end is the thing. And I always, I mean, whenever I was preaching, because I'm not pastoring anymore, but when I was still pastoring, I did a lot more weddings. When I would preach at weddings, often I would say is like, okay, today you have this beautiful, amazing, wonderful day, but this is day one. You don't have a marriage today. You have a wedding. Yes. And, class is now in session. And, I think it's all started here.
It's important to kind of emphasize in a pastoral context, I think, that when we talk about the sacrament of marriage, we do not mean the wedding that we just performed. That was the sacrament. You've had it now. Like, your whole marriage is the sacrament.
Yeah, I mean, just like a baptism. I mean, yes, what happens in that ritual is super important, but just like baptism is the beginning, or ordination is the beginning, it's the thing that gives you what you need to do the rest.
Right, exactly. And so I think that this is sort of the idea. I think that that's the will you look back is a test of actually how much do you love her, and what kind of love is it. And you can let's anthropomorphize a little bit more than the text encourages us, and think about, Hades knows what it's like to give up his love, because that's the deal that he made when he kidnapped Persephone, and then there was a whole thing and all the gods got involved, and so they said, okay, listen, half the year with you, half the year with her mother. So this is the question, is like, Hades has to spend half the year not looking at his wife. Can Orpheus make it out without looking back?
Even once.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, Hades is like, look, bro.
Yeah. Like
you think your marriage is tough?
Yes.
Look at mine.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so
she has to go live with my mother-in-law for
right.
At least he's like, at least I don't have to live with my
Exactly. So let me just give the same part of the story from Virgil real quick. It's really beautiful.
Okay. All right.
And now you don't get to read Virgil today, Father Andrew, after all that. No, I'm kidding.
I already didn't I? Yes.
And now, retracing his steps, he evaded all mischance, and Eurydice regained, approaching the upper air. She followed behind, since, by the way, Virgil has Persephone, or Proserpine in Latin. He has Virgil has Persephone being the one who actually commanded this. She's the one that gave the conditions. She followed behind, since Proserpine had ordained it, and when a sudden madness seized the incautious lover, one to be forgiven if the spirits knew how to forgive. Of course they don't. He stopped, and forgetful, alas, on the edge of light, his will conquered, he looked back now at his Eurydice. In that instant all his effort was wasted, and his pact with the cruel tyrant was broken, and 3 times a crash was heard by the waters of Avernus. Orpheus, she cried, what madness has destroyed my wretched self and you? See, the cruel fates recall me, and sleep hides my swimming eyes. Farewell now, I am taken, wrapped round by vast night, stretching out to you, alas, hands no longer yours. She spoke and suddenly fled, far from his eyes, like smoke vanishing in thin air, and never saw him more, though he grasped in vain at shadows and longed to speak further, nor did Charon, the ferryman of Orcus, let him cross the barrier of that marsh again.
Oh, cool Orcus reference.
Yeah,
Orcus is the kind of the Hellmouth. Yeah. He seems to be Etruscan, by the way. Like a pre-Roman god. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just haunting. It's one of my favorite bits in like classical poetry. These lines I've just read.
Yeah. I mean, it seems to like it does what it does to us on some level what Orpheus does within the story. Like it's very moving, very
Yeah. So I'll let you read the wrap up here, and there's a little bit at the end. You can decide how much of it you want to read. It's a family show, but this is what Ovid says. So
all right, okay. Here's Ovid. Stunned by the double loss of his wife, Orpheus was like that coward who saw Cerberus, the 3-headed dog, chained by the central neck, and whose fear vanished with his nature as stone transformed his body. Or like Olenus and you, his Letheia, too proud of your beauty, he wished to be charged with your crime and seem guilty himself. Once wedded hearts, you are now rocks set on moist Mount Ida. Orpheus wished and prayed in vain to cross the Styx again, but the ferryman fended him off. Still for 7 days he sat there by the shore, neglecting himself and not taking nourishment. Not a lot grows down there. Sorrow, troubled thought, and tears were his food. He took himself to lofty Mount Rhodope, and Hymus, swept by the winds, complaining that the gods of Erebus were cruel. 3 times the sun had ended the year in watery Pisces, and Orpheus had abstained from the love of women, plural. from the love of women, either because things ended badly for him or because he had sworn to do so. Yet many felt a desire to be joined with the poet, and many grieved at rejection. Indeed, he was the first of the Thracian people to transfer his love to young boys. See, there you go. Paganism, man.
Gosh darn it, people.
And enjoy their brief springtime and early flowering this side of manhood.
Yep. So
I know, but I'm okay, insert
I'm really
10-second rant about paganism.
Yep, go for
which
it.
is like, people have this idea that paganism is like this nice, loving
eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich while Father Andrew.
Right. Like it's this nice, valuing everybody, blah, blah, blah. But no, it's not. Yes, it has left us with some of these beautiful, beautiful things.
Yeah.
But then you're reminded here in the midst of this beautiful stuff, they're pederasts.
Yes.
Like, I mean...
Yes.
Anyway, okay. I mean, that's not the point of the story. It's not.
It's important to remember that Orpheus is... The two things Orpheus is credited with inventing are the pagan mystery cults and this particular sin.
Yeah.
So, Orpheus ultimately is going to be killed by the women of Thrace. The motive and manner of his death varies in different accounts. But essentially, there is the earliest known source tells of his death that he's torn to pieces as part of a Bacchic orgy. Now, this is not... I need to explain the Bacchic thing.
I mean, Bacchic orgies tear people to pieces. That's what they do.
That's what they do. It means like an ecstasy or like an overwhelming. It's not specifically sexual, although it's not either. But it's like
there's no safe words.
There's no. It's a really bad time. People get drunk, they go into ecstasies, and then there are these women who travel with Dionysius who tear people apart, called the Maenads. And when his body is torn apart, his head, still singing along with his lyre, floats to the island of Lesbos, where an important oracle of Orpheus was established. And the head continued to be there, according to ancient sources, continued to be there and continued to prophesy until basically its importance overshadowed that of the oracle of Apollo at Delphi. And then Apollo got jealous and told the head to stop talking.
Yeah. Step aside, son.
Yes. And then the muses gather up all the dismembered limbs of Orpheus and they bury them, and then his lyre is placed in the heaven as one of the constellations. And so, in the Symposium, by the way, Plato went on to say that Orpheus died an unmanly death, that is, he was pulled apart by women because he lacked manly courage. And in Ovid, we do get some more details about this, his grief, his subsequent murder by the women of Thrace, is part of his overall metamorphoses. Remember, in the metamorphoses, everyone changes. So his metamorphosis is his transformation basically into pure song, while his shade goes back to Hades for this bittersweet reunion with his beloved. Do you want to read this? You want me to read this?
I'll read this from Ovid.
Okay, yeah, go
for
it.
The fierce women rushed back to kill the poet. As he stretched out his hands, speaking ineffectually for the first time ever, not affecting them in any way with his voice, the impious ones murdered him, and the spirit breathed out.
Normally when things try to kill Orpheus, he sings, and then they, like, even Wild Beast, everything stops.
Yeah.
So this is the first time it's never worked. Continue.
Yeah.
First time and last time.
They can face the music. And the spirit breathed out through that mouth to which stones listened, and which was understood by the senses of wild creatures, O God, vanished down the wind. The birds lamenting cried for you, Orpheus, the crowd of wild creatures, the hard flints, the trees that often gathered to your song, shedding their leaves, mourned you with bared crowns. They say the rivers also were swollen with their own tears, and the naiads and dryads with disheveled hair put on somber clothes. The poet's limbs were strewn in different places. The head and the lyre you, Hebrus, received, and a miracle, floating in midstream, the lyre lamented mournfully. Mournfully the lifeless tongue murmured, mournfully the banks echoed in reply. And now, carried onward to the sea, they left their native river mouth and reached the shores of Lesbos, at Methymna. Here, as the head lay exposed on the alien sand, its moist hair dripping brine, a fierce snake attacked it. But at last Phoebus came and prevented it. That's Apollo, by the way, everybody. and as it was about to bite, and turned the serpent's gaping jaws to stone, and froze the mouth, wide open as it was. The ghost of Orpheus sank under the earth, and recognized all those places it had seen before. And searching the fields of the blessed, he found his wife again, and held her eagerly in his arms. There they walked together side by side. Now she goes in front, and he follows her. Now he leads and looks back as he can do, in safety now, at his Eurydice. Cold comfort.
So, happy ending? No? No? Nobody?
It's safe now. We're both dead.
Yeah. All right, so really briefly, I want to sort of mention the ways, because Orpheus actually turns out to be quite important a figure in later polemics between Christians and pagans. In
this is crazy.
The more philosophically inclined pagans, sometimes, and people that nowadays we would consider to be Neoplatonists, a category which I intensely dislike for various reasons, which we will not get into today.
Yeah.
But in any case, Orpheus is frequently referred to by the church fathers of the first 5 centuries. There's a lot of scholarship about this. Again, much of it is in French. But it would require probably another episode to recover all of the references and analyze them closely. But let me just kind of summarize the 3 main ways in which his story is used.
Okay.
First of all, Orpheus, as we've established, is the founder and the origin of the Greek mystery cults and of paganism as a whole. This is a reference to the Orphic odes or the Orphic hymns, which are probably no longer around. At least I think Origen talks about the fact that, hey, well, listen, the Orphic texts are no longer around. They didn't survive, but we still have the scriptures, kind of a thing.
Nice. Little shade being thrown.
Oh, don't worry. There's going to be a lot of shade. So it's in this sense that Orpheus is considered by the Greeks to be the first hierophant, like priest, or the first theologian. In other words, whatever he established carries significant weight. This is really important to both the arguments Greeks were using to use Orpheus against Christianity, and then the counter-arguments that Christians would use in their own polemics. So whatever Orpheus established carries significant weight, and in fact, the early pagan polemics against Christianity basically are contrasting the Orphic, which is the supposedly elegant, supposedly sophisticated, let's call them scriptures, right, against the barbaric Hebrew scriptures on which Christianity had been founded. So they're saying, listen, we have high-quality Greek poetry, and you have a bunch of barbarian sand people.
Yeah, it's basically an aesthetic argument. Our stuff sounds better.
Right, yeah.
Basically.
Right.
It's the original
right.
Come and see.
Yeah.
Which I do not like. I do not like that, the way that people use that as an evangelistic message now for Orthodoxy. Because they mean come and see our cool aesthetic stuff. They don't mean what the apostle meant when he said come and see. Yeah. Which was come and see Jesus.
Come and see Jesus, yeah. So I have so many things that I want to say about that.
I know. This is one of my many rants.
Different podcast.
And I don't say mini rants. It's one of my many rants.
Many, yeah. So this is the first way in which Orpheus is used by people who are trying to write polemics against Christianity in the first 5 centuries. There's also Orpheus, and then what Christianity does is it takes that and turns it around, and Orpheus's Thracian origin is emphasized. Now, this is important because the Thracians are, Bulgarians and some people in Greece and Turkey, I guess. The Thracians are barbarians. So, follow the sort of... The accusation is, it's the Orphic stuff, that's written by Orpheus, he's the creator, founder of our religion, and your stuff is actually made by a bunch of barbarians. And then Christianity could say, in return, actually, no, your guy, who is your source of truth and religion, is Thracian. He's also a barbarian. And the fact that Christianity has barbarous, which is to say just non-Greek or Roman origins.
Yeah, that's what barbarian
has nothing to do with whether or not it's true. And then secondly, there is an ancient Jewish tradition, and this is attested at least to the 2nd century BC in Alexandria, that Orpheus, seeking after wisdom, came to the land of Egypt, which in Greek understanding of the world is the land of wisdom, and he converted to the Hebrew religion while in Alexandria. I wish we should have done like some really clickbaity, like, here's three religions, or in the third one will shock you or something. But yes, this is a tradition that predates
Orpheus
Christianity.
the Israelite?
That Orpheus traveled to Alexandria, converted to the Hebrew religion while in Alexandria, and thus the founder of the pagan religion ultimately learned wisdom from the law of Moses. Now, the idea then is, if you want to use Orpheus, there's, listen, let's talk. You want to talk about Orpheus? Let's talk about Orpheus.
We got Orpheus.
So I'll just read one example from Clement of Alexandria. And I want to point out that Clement is mainly kind of focusing on the first of the three senses that we just talked about. And what he's going to do is contrast Orpheus with Christ.
Okay.
So the idea is Christ as the new Orpheus. And he doesn't go to the descent into hell and resurrection, which is where you would think he would go. But instead, he focuses on his sort of culture hero aspect. So he says, in my opinion, our Thracian Orpheus and the Theban and the Methymnian too are not worthy of the name of man, since they were deceivers. Orpheus, under cover of music, they have outraged human life, being influenced by demons, through some artful, sated sorcery to compass man's ruin. By commemorating deeds of violence in their religious rites, and by the way, he's listing Orpheus, but then he's also naming important figures in the Dionysian cult, which is sort of, I think, one of the main things he's writing against. This is from his exhortations to the Greeks. By commemorating deeds of violence in the religious rites, talking about the Bacchic stuff, and by bringing stories of sorrow into worship, they were the first to lead men by the hand to idolatry, yes, and with stocks and stones, that is to say, statues and pictures, to build up the stupidity of custom. By their chants and enchantments, they have held captive in the lowest slavery that truly noble freedom which belongs to those who are citizens under heaven. But far different is my minstrel, for he has come to bring to a speedy end the bitter slavery of the demons that lord it over us, and by leading us back into the mild and kindly yoke of piety, he calls once again to heaven those who have been cast down to earth. He is at least is the only one who tames, whoever tamed the most intractable of all wild beasts, savage man. For he tamed birds, that is flighty men, reptiles, that is crafty men, lions, that is passionate men, swine, that is pleasure-loving men, wolves, that is rapacious men. Men without understanding are stocks and stones. Indeed, a man steeped in ignorance is even more senseless than the stones. So he's taking these sort of tropes from especially the Dionysian cult, and then he sort of says, here's what those mean to you, and then actually here's what those mean to us. As our witness, so when he complains about, when he says like the statues and pictures or whatever, that's not an iconoclastic rant. Clement of Alexandria, not an iconoclast, but what he's saying is that's referring to a part of something that was done as part of the Dionysian cult, right? And so he's saying, says men, how do we understand it as Christians? Men without understanding are stocks and stones, and therefore also false images. Indeed, a man steeped in ignorance is even more senseless than stones. As our witness, let the prophetic voice, which shares in the song of truth, come forward, speaking words of pity for those who waste away their lives in ignorance and folly. And then he quotes something we're going to read this weekend. For God is able of these stones to raise up children unto Abraham. So Christ is our minstrel.
Yeah.
And he's the founder of our rites.
Yeah. There are a couple things that struck me about this right away. Number one, reptilians confirmed.
Yes. It's
number two, you began by saying like this, he emphasizes Orpheus as this culture hero versus, as you said, what we might expect, which is the descent into Hades. But I think what this does is it actually emphasizes that how is Orpheus largely received in this time? I mean, Clement of Alexandria is when is he? Second century? Yeah, I mean, he's very early. How is he received? This is the way that he's mainly received, is in terms of the cultic experience. that it's not largely about this particular story. Now, I think for us in the 21st century,
the story is a part of it, and if we knew more about like Orphic cults, remember most of the hymns don't survive to us. It's quite possible a lot of the mystery cults seem to have a sort of come as close to death as possible sort of aspect to them, and so there probably is something like that, involving his myth, but we just don't know.
We don't know. It's just kind of lost.
Yeah.
But I think number one, the context is simply different, and Clement knows things that we don't.
Yeah, that's right. He's dealing with people who really still believe this stuff and practice it.
Oh, absolutely. But I think for us in the 21st century, applying this in a new way, new as compared to Clement's context of 1900 years ago, I think for us, we live in this sort of flattened space, where there is no underworld. Although, wow, we have an experience of hell, I think it's, emphasizing the descent into the underworld is actually a very powerful thing for us to do to kind of recover some of this.
And the desire of the mystery cults is this desire for escape. This desire for, by the way, there's a whole lot of Baron and Luthien parallels, which I'm not drawing today.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
But this is a desire for escape, and it's an escape from mortality, this idea that we're sort of trapped in it. We're trapped in our bodies. We're trapped in this world. We're trapped in a cycle that's going to just keep repeating over and over again. And, that's part of what's going on with the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. You can't really get out.
Right. It's futile. That's one of the things. It's this futile fatalism.
Right.
One of the things I think is a really powerful theme in the scriptures that comes before the Gospels is, the Old Testament does have its own multiple stories of descent into Hades.
Right, of course.
Sheol, of course, as the language is there. And one of the ones I think that is really powerful is one that a lot of people don't know, because the book of Numbers is so tough to get through if what you're looking for is story, because a lot of what Numbers is census data and land allotments and this kind of stuff. But there is a story there of the original priesthood of all believers story, where you've got this group called the Sons of Korah, or the Sons of Kor, and these guys come to Moses and Aaron and they basically say, "Hey, we're all priests here, buddy. Why is it that Aaron and his sons, they get to be the priest? We're all priests. We can all offer incense to Yahweh."
Yeah, go try it, see how that goes.
Yeah, exactly. This is very disruptive, of course. And Moses speaks to God, and God basically says, "Okay, well, they want to be priests. Let them be priests. Everybody get out your censers. We're all going to be priests today." And they all line up. There's a big sort of priestly battle of the bands. And what happens to the sons of Korah when they light their censers is that the earth opens up and swallows them down alive into Sheol. And, now they don't, not all the sons of Korah die that day. Some are left, because eventually you get this, what seems to be like maybe a kind of a chant group in the tabernacle and temple that are called the Sons of Korah. Obviously, these are not the same group exactly, because most of them went down alive.
Do you think it was just a band that named themselves ironically?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
No, it seems to be probably relatives, descendants of those who weren't sucked down into the underworld for that. But the reason why that's fascinating and important is that if you read, I actually read a really interesting paper about this. If you read the Psalms closely, you can see that a number of the Psalms, they have this superscript that says, "for the sons of Korah," right at the beginning, which indicates that maybe this was written by them or made to be sung by them or something like that. And if you look at a number of them, they have this theme in them, which is the idea of being rescued out of Sheol, which that is not a thing in ancient paganism.
Yeah.
It's not all the stories are that you go down there and you're there. Like literally, this is a story about someone attempting to get rescued out of Sheol. And we read several of these descent stories, and there are rescues, right? but they're all have to do, like, you get eaten up or destroyed or whatever, but only like the gods make it out on some level. But they're still like, they're not themselves. They're not unscathed. They're not, like, there's transformations, there's changes into something else. Only our God is the one who goes as a man into Sheol and is free among the dead.
Yes.
Right. And rescues all of them from Hades,
from the Psalms.
Yeah. So, your Holy One will not see corruption in the grave. Right. It's prophesied by the story of the sons of Korah, with their hope of being rescued out of Sheol. And it's just a hope in the Psalms.
Yeah.
But there are these references, of course, to the one who is free among the dead, the King of Glory, who stands at the entrance to the underworld and bashes on the doors. I mean, Psalm 24, right? So I mean, that's to me is one of the things about reading some of these underworld descents, and particularly with Orpheus, is it's so fatalistic. If anyone could have done it, right, Orpheus should have been able to. But even the pagans say that it's not possible.
Right.
Even the pagans say that once you're dead, you're dead.
The founder of their religion, that's the idea. Yeah.
Right. I mean, and this is one of the polemics of Christianity against paganism is not, all your stories are false, but rather our story is better than your story. The story we're telling about our God is better than any of the stories you tell about your gods.
Yeah,
it's inherently superior. Our God can beat up your gods, and right. Doesn't even have to beat them up; just simply smashes them, steps on them like ants. So I think that's one of the cool things about this story is that, and why Christians would be interested in it is to say, oh, look at this, they hope for the same thing as us, and we have it,
right?
So
I have some concluding thoughts, but we should check in with the chat.
Yeah. Let's see what these people are talking about over there.
Yeah, chat was weird today. That's my fault.
Chat was weird today.
That was weird today. I do sort of owe, by the way, explanation about what's going on at the end of Prince Caspian.
Oh yeah, you threw that out there, and someone's like, "What? There's an orgy in Prince Caspian?"
I mean, sure, it's a Bacchic, it's a Bacchanalia. Maybe we should say Bacchanalia. So people can listen to this with their kids. I'm really sorry, guys. But also, like, I don't want to give you all a neutered picture of the ancient world. Like I don't want to give the sense that I just think everything that was happening in like ancient paganism was an unqualified good or something like that. Yeah, I mean, this is us. This is the story of the human race, and I want to tell it honestly and accurately. And so in any case, there's a Bacchanalia at the end of Prince Caspian, and it's the bit with Silenus on the donkey, who is a figure from, and Bacchus and Silenus, who are figures from Greek mythology and have to do with the Bacchanalia, all the grapevines growing, and the way that the Bacchanalia literally pulls down the strongholds of the Telmarines, pulls down the bridges over the river, and it's important because of what Prince Caspian is about, which is Lewis responding to a very certain spirit that was kind of dominant in his time, and but of course, like the Maenads show up. And these are the young women who are there, who would normally, go crazy and would start pulling people apart, which is how the whole thing ends.
Yeah.
And there's this moment where Susan says to Lucy, or Lucy says to Susan something like, oh boy, these girls are a little scary. I don't think I would feel comfortable if Aslan were not here. And so it's a meditation on the importance of revelry and feasting, and the way that if Christ is present, if he's in it, then you can take the human vitality and passion and all these things, and they can be used constructively. They can be used to free and to liberate. But if he's not present, then it becomes something really dark and violent. And
the passions.
Yeah, the passions. And so we are headed, of course, into Paschal joy, and it will be important for us as we celebrate. And I will be celebrating. People know I like a party, but we're going to try to do it with sobriety in a Christian way, not with drunkenness or fornication, but with joy in our hearts for the resurrection. So
absolutely,
all right,
absolutely. Okay, we'll just go back and forth on this one and pick different comments to comment on. So Savannah says, so I scrolled back to the beginning. She says, I'm totally going to start saying "come at me, Bale," instead of "come at me, bro" from now on. I feel like this should be a T-shirt.
That would be a sweet T-shirt. Somebody get
that would be pretty great, actually. That would be the one to wear to Holy Friday night, right?
Come at me, Bale. Yeah. Also, don't wear T-shirts to. Anyway, okay.
I always wear T-shirts, but it's
well under a I mean
I
encourage people, if you're going to dress up for anything, Holy Week, Pascha, this is the time. Nice,
of course,
celebrating the resurrection. But if you want to like wear a "come at me, Bale" to the Pascha picnic or something, I'm here for it. I'm all about that. Yeah.
All right.
Let's see.
There's several coffee references here. Early on.
I don't remember how coffee came up. This has been the rise and grind. That's what it is.
Yeah, very referential.
Holy cow, guys!
Yeah.
Wow,
very elusive.
Yeah. Oh boy. All right. Sivana says, I do not remember these parts, talking about Orpheus. When I heard the story in 5th grade, I believe the story was a little altered. I think the version I heard as a kid was that he made some nymphs so sad that they drowned him or something. So I've never seen that version of the story, Sivana. It's possible that is an extant version that's out there. Like I said, there are a few different reasons why. Everyone agrees he was killed by women. In the earliest version of the story, he's killed as part of the Bacchanalia. And it also has to do with like the old god Apollo versus the new god of Dionysius, the god of wine. Like those things contrasted to each other. It's also possible. I read another version where basically the women just like were really into him, and he was not into any of them anymore, and so they took it badly and killed him. But there's also like a very long tradition going back to at least Victorian times. So I guess not a long tradition, but there is a tradition of sort of making, modifying some details to make the stories sort of like safe for the kids. If you want something like that, and that is, if you have young children, that is where you should start.
Sure.
There's a collection called Bullfinch's Mythology that was specifically written for this purpose. It's and it was written by I think a New England shopkeeper of all people, but he wrote a guide because he realized people were no longer getting references to poetry, kind of like the reason that Snorri wrote the Edda. He realized, children in 19th century America were just not understanding certain references anymore. So he wrote a book of basically a compilation of myths, of mythology, that are safe and appropriate for children, but which basically have all the main stories in them. And that's what we use with our kids when they're young. And then, as you're able and as you have maturity, you can kind of add on the other things. So,
yeah. Our Swedish listener, kind of going back up a little bit further, Josef Svenningsson, he says, in Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which is not a game that I have played, but my wife and my kids played it, actually. In Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Link goes down into the underworld to give body to a spirit that will help him defeat Ganon.
So I'm just going to say, we're Zelda respecters here on the Great Tales podcast. The last Zelda game that I played was Ocarina of Time, which means it's been a really long time since I sat down and played a video game of any kind, let alone Zelda. But here's the challenge, guys. If you guys raise... Father Andrew has no idea what I'm going to say right now. If we raise like some stupid amount of money for Ancient Faith at some point, like $10,000, I will make Father Andrew live stream Legend of Zelda, some Zelda game with me. We'll do a Twitch stream. But it's got to be like such a stupid amount of money that we probably don't ever have to worry about it. But but yeah,
hey, I mean, it could be done. I once in like
it would be a fun
days, in like 4 or 5 days, I one time and I'm not saying this, to toot my own horn here. I literally have a trophy which you have seen here in my studio.
Yes, it's true.
I one time in about 4 or 5 days raised about $30,000 for Ancient Faith Ministries. So
and
now it was a pretty extreme moment, but
we're happy, by the way, to raise money for Ancient Faith Ministries. There are no millionaires here. We're just, people trying to make good podcast and media and content. And this is a listener and viewer supported production of Ancient Faith Radio, I should just mention. And so let me think about a fundraising goal. I think that would be pretty fun. I don't know that we'll actually live stream Zelda, but I think it would be pretty sweet. I think it would be pretty sweet to do something, We
could do something.
Let me think about that.
I mean, put it in the chat or, send us an email. We barely mention our email. I don't know. This is why we get so little email.
We did get an email.
The Great Tales at ancientfaith.com.
We did get an email, and I forgot to put it in the script to read it today.
Oh, man.
So it's okay. Next time.
Yeah. Right. Oh, yeah. Okay. Benjamin Fian says, Virgil is the Wendell Berry of the ancient world. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's pretty fair. I mean, Virgil is he's a very interesting figure, and one of those people who was much more important after his death than he ever was in his lifetime. But yeah, I mean, I think that's I would have to think about that. But certainly in the sense that Wendell has
praising the farmer,
written a lot of books
that
praising the farmer and but also kind of like advocating for a different kind of life, one that's not so much tied up with consumerism and other things. I think Wendell Berry is a very important person. I think his books are great. So,
yeah.
And if Wendell Berry ended up being my guide through the underworld, I can't say that I would be like totally shocked and surprised. Like, sure. I think I would
Wendell
accept.
Berry, psychopomp.
I would be like, Wendell Berry? Oh, cool. All right, sure. I'm on. I don't know my Kevin Bacon number, but my Wendell Berry number is 2.
Oh, ooh, wow.
Or 1. Wait, is it numbers? Is it separate? Is it levels of separation from?
If you know him personally, that means your number is 1.
Okay, so then my Wendell Berry number is 2.
Okay. Oh wow.
So there you go.
Yeah, that should be fun. Sound off in the chat, everybody. Who do you want to be your psychopomp? Who would be your ideal psychopomp? Yeah. That could be a fun bit. Or you can email us if you don't want to put it in the chat. That's fine.
By the way, the answer to this is that you want it to be the Mother of God or the Archangel Michael, and if it's somebody else, you may be in trouble. But anyway,
of course. I'm talking about in our imaginary Narnia.
I know. I'm just like, Okay, so we have some Harry Garris. I always want to say Gary Harris. I'm really sorry, Harry. Harry Garris asks, when reflecting on descents into Hades in literature, I remember that before Aragorn... trying to make it a Lord of the Rings podcast. I remember that before Aragorn descends and frees the men of Dunharrow, he mentioned that he had passed by that place before and wished not to return. Why is his victorious visit the second visit? Is it something going on with Aragorn having been there before and left afraid to return? He's passed by it before. Aragorn has like a whole kind of career in Gondor and Rohan as part of his epic backstory. But I don't think it's saying that he'd ever enter the Paths of the Dead. He's just passed by it before, recognized it as a place of ill omen. But certainly a place in which, Aragorn does, in a sense, like symbolically kind of die when he enters. Like there's no more Strider, after that. That's it. Like you don't get to be. And he knows. He's like, once I take this road, there's only one place that this ends, right?
Yeah, and I mean, the reason he goes there when he does is because it's time, because he's told seek the paths of the dead. Right. Like, there are multiple, I've done work on this. This isn't that podcast, but I'll just mention I've done work on this. There are multiple descents into Hades in the Tolkien Legendarium. To me, the most powerful one, the most obvious one, and I won't go on about this, but I'll just mention it, and all of you Tolkien fans can go read this for yourself. The most obvious one that uses a lot of this descent into Hades language is Fog on the Barrow Downs. Tom Bombadil rescuing the hobbits from the barrow. But anyway, one of the comments I liked was from where was it? Casey Dubois says Cora and company made a groundbreaking discovery. So, very good, very nice.
Boy, let's see. Oh, we've got George MacDonald. Silvana wants George MacDonald as her psychopomp, which is what Lewis has in The Great Divorce, of course. Susan wants Lewis
as her psychopomp.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, Joel asked, is there any direct parallels with Baron and Luthien and Orpheus? Well, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, obviously. So, all right. Well, why don't we go ahead and wrap this one up? Thank you very much, everybody, for your comments.
Let me just say, sort of as a concluding thought, the connection between the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice, and then Orpheus's role as the founder of the Orphic religion, if we can call it that, which is not a religion in the modern sense, but it's a collection of mystery cults, seems to be this idea of trying to escape a cycle of death. And you'll notice that Clement of Alexandria says that Orpheus, undercover, that these men, the founders of the mystery cults, undercover of religion, have outraged human life, being influenced by demons through some artful, sated sorcery to compass man's ruin. And anytime that you sort of see a similarity between like one of these mystery cults and because this is something that non-Christians will say is a polemic against Christianity. It's something that Protestants will sometimes say as a polemic against Orthodoxy, for instance, is this idea that the stuff you're doing on Pascha, the Eucharist, all that stuff, it's just like a rebranded, Hellenic mystery cult. But the thing is that the thing that these mystery cults are offering is saying, hey, you're stuck in death, you're stuck in hell, you can't get out. So let us give you a hand up. But then all the things that they offer you, all the things that the god of death offers you as a get out of hell free card, end up trapping you there. And the only thing that makes, but now it's worse because now you're in despair. Now there's nothing you can do.
It's like salted licorice.
Yeah.
You think you're eating candy.
What?
But it's a trap.
Wow. Paganism is the salted licorice of... Okay, all right. But our faith, our minstrel, our Christ, truly descended into Hades and defeats the god of death and brings us up and raises us up to him, right? And our hope is real. And that's what we're looking forward to in this coming week.
Amen. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in today to our discussion of Orpheus. If you were edified by this conversation, please like, subscribe, share, and review. And hey, feel free to give us one of those super chats or whatever thing where you make a little donation to Ancient Faith
It
Ministries.
would normally be a donation to the T-shirt fund, so to speak. But as you can see, I completely gave up on the T-shirt thing this week. Did not have the headspace this week. But I'll be back with a T-shirt next time.
Yep. But, this show's home is right here on YouTube. But we are also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all those other feeds as well.
If you are watching on YouTube, make sure you click the little bell when you subscribe so that you get notified every time we put out a new episode, which is twice a month. In our next episode, we will be joined, and I got a text message confirming while we were recording today, we will be joined by the Bard of Devon himself, Dr. Martin Shaw, who will be coming on to talk to us about Celtic fairy tales.
Oh, man.
I cannot stress enough how much you do not want to miss next episode.
And we learned recently from YouTube that if you, and this is true, I sent this to Richard, this is true. If you put Jack Black playing Indiana Jones and make him a good bit thinner, then what you get visually then is Dr. Martin Shaw. It's just
not
true.
At all personality-wise.
No.
Not at all personality-wise.
Not at all. But I just had to point that out. That, I was like, what is happening on here? So
no, I'm very excited.
Yeah. I am too. I got to meet him in London, and I didn't really get to have much conversation with him, but I was enthused to meet him, and I was very happy to be in his presence.
He's the sort of person like when you meet him and you're with him, It's just it's like, oh, I always knew someone like this in the world had to exist. You know,
yes.
like it was necessary that there would be one of these.
Yeah.
So
if there weren't, it would be necessary to invent him.
That's right. Oh, nice.
Exactly. So farewell, everybody.
Farewell, everyone.
And may you trace the silhouette of virtue in everything that you read.
This has been a listener and viewer supported presentation of Ancient Faith Radio.